In this video, we will try to go through a scenario which is totally relevant to all the couple of videos that we have been through in last few series. Okay, so as per the name on the screen, you see hybrid Azure architecture with Azure Private DNS. So we will create a scenario and then we'll try to figure out the best possible architecture for it along with the advantages and other limitations, and this will help us to digest all the knowledge that we have grabbed from last couple of videos. All right, so let's try to build the scenario. Let's suppose we have this requirement where we have this organization which is running a hybrid cloud environment with a mix of Azure and on-premises resources. And let's write here some key requirement. So we understood it's a hybrid environment. Okay, then there is some requirement like we want internal communication between the Azure resources or Azure VMs. Let's say Azure VMs, and let's make it a little complex with multiple VNet. Okay, that is one requirement. Then let's create one more. We need to integrate with on-prem AD DNS because it's hybrid, and we also want to get the name resolved from on-prem to Azure and Azure to on-prem. So conditional forwarding to specific zones for both Azure and on-premises. Let's put some security related conditions like restrict access to the DNS queries based on source network, ensure DNS traffic is encrypted, or prevent DNS spoofing or caching. So need to take care of the security part. Okay, and then let's put some complexity. I think multiple VNet is okay. We can consider that. Multiple subscription will also be considered, and this hybrid is also kind of complexity here. Okay, so this is a simple scenario where we will try to architect in a way that all the requirement will be fulfilled. So let's see some design possibilities with Azure Private DNS because it's a multiple VNets. So we can create one private DNS and link it with multiple uh, virtual networks. It works. It has that capabilities. So this will help us, and we can also utilize something called auto registration, where virtual machines automatically register their names in the private DNS zone. So it will reduce the manual efforts. All right. And yes, only Azure resources names are get auto registered, not OS specific names. But we also have this cross subscription and cross region support through private DNS zone. But there are some limitations as well, right? Limitations like private DNS zone cannot natively forward queries to on-prem DNS servers. We have seen in previous video. Uh, Conditional forwarding requires a custom DNS server set up on Azure. Private DNS zones are accessible only from within Azure. External on-prem or internet-facing resources cannot query these zones directly. And management overhead for this setup, right? So let's go ahead and try to build this architecture here. Okay, so let's suppose this is our Azure. Okay, this will help us to digest all the knowledge, to put all the knowledge in the perspective. This is Azure. And in the Azure, let's create multiple virtual networks. This is one virtual network, this is another virtual network, this is another virtual network. Okay, and we have virtual machines in it. Okay, just to understand. So let me name them quickly. VNet 1, this is VNet 2, and this is VNet 3. Okay, we also have on premises. This is our on premises, and we have Active Directory running here, AD or ADD as you could say, and we have all the resources running here as well on premises, multiple resources, and there is a connectivity. There is a tunnel between VPN tunnel between Azure and on premises, and let's extend this tunnel if we can a little bit to the this virtual network, which is, we can say, shared services, and these are also connected to each other through peering. Let's call it peered. We will learn about peering as well. Just understand from the perspective of connectivity, like these virtual networks can talk to each other for now. And here we are spinning up services which are shared between these virtual network, for example firewalls or DNS server, because we have to fulfill the conditional forwarding requirement for this scenario, and private DNS zone does not support it, so we have to run DNS server. All right, and for Azure, what we need to do first, we need to create this Azure Private DNS Zone, Azure DNS Zone. Okay, that's our first, and let's call it Azure dot local. What it will do, it will cover the internal communication between the Azure resources, like web app.azure.local to db.azure.local, as we've seen in the previous video, where web app and db are talking to each other through azure.local. This is the DNS. Okay, now this DNS can easily be linked with multiple virtual network, or let me link it with this link, link, and link. Okay, so it can easily be linked with multiple virtual networks, so all the resources between these networks can utilize this private zone easily. So this condition is also met. DNS zone, multiple virtual network. Okay, now because we have to fulfill this conditional forwarding thing, so we have to create a Windows Server VM in a shared services virtual network right here, which is our utilized for the DNS forwarder. Let's call it DNS forwarder. This is our DNS forwarder server here in the shared services. This handles DNS forwarding between Azure Private DNS and on-premises DNS. So we have this right here. Now, on-premises DNS server, it will, let's call it corp.local. Okay, for internal on-premises. Corp.local domain, and forwards Azure related queries to the DNS forwarder here, like this. It will forward these queries, Azure related queries, to DNS forwarder. Okay, and there is a connectivity of site to site VPN tunnel, so they can easily talk to this guy. If these are the one of these machine try to talk to any Azure related service, this will go to this DNS and it will see I don't have this information. This will go forward here, and this will go talk to this and get the information back to this virtual machine, and they can talk to that relevant resources. So that's how the query flow will work. Now, if Azure VM query azure.local, let's suppose this VM query azure.local, it can simply go through this private zone, not outside the Azure. My man, it will go and talk to this, get the information, and will talk to this guy or maybe any other service. Now, if on-premises talk to Azure DNS, on-prem DNS forwarder azure.local queries to the custom DNS forwarder in Azure, which resolves them to the DNS private zone, the first one that where we created this red flow. If Azure VM try to talk to the on-prem VM, this custom DNS forwarder here will help us forward corp.local queries to the on-premises DNS server. That's the reason we need this conditional forwarder here. So it can take care of the uh, Azure to on-premises, like azure.local to corp.local. All right, so this is the scenario. There is certain advantages of this scenario as well, of course. Let's talk about the very first thing is centralized management. You can see that easily, right? Seamless hybrid connectivity through name instead of IPs. That's why seamless connectivity um, through conditional forwarders, and of course scalability, because private DNS zones scale globally while the custom DNS server can be horizontally scaled if needed. Right now, let's see this part, the security consideration. Now, if you see the way I have built it, there are certain things we already checked. The very first thing is uh, network isolation for the security, right? So we're going to place the custom DNS server in a shared services with strict NSG rules and NSG's network security groups. We already talked about in previous videos, not in this particular network specific series, but it will come in future videos. So just for your understanding, and it will only allow the required DNS traffic port 53 for trusted sources such as Azure Virtual Network or on-premises subnets. We have encryption or encrypted DNS traffic. You're using TLS or HTTPS, where which is supported for encrypted DNS queries. DNS spoofing protection, applying RBACs, audit monitoring. We're applying all these things. Okay, we'll go through the DNS related security in next video. This will help us from the same scenario, right? Okay, so we have almost covered everything from this particular scenario, which help us to understand all the knowledge we gathered regarding this DNS name resolution. I think that's all about it. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope it was useful. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.